Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And I moved out to Tucson in 2003, and fundamentally this town changed my life. After I got on the radio in 2011, over the last 11 years now, I found my voice and have interviewed almost 2,000 cats and really just tried to explore our cultural heritage in this country and the lineage of all musics in this country. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is so many of the cats that I've interviewed might have gone to Berklee School of Music or North Texas, things like that. But ultimately, they learned on the bandstand. They found their individual voices on the bandstand. And ironically enough, they might have a gig today in the academy, but the students that are teaching are not afforded the same opportunities. There just aren't as many live gigs. There is a supply and demand issue. And I get a chance today to speak to somebody who's been on my radar for some time. He came from Miami, I believe, and very gifted player. I saw him play live a couple weeks ago, and he was just floating with the time, sort of like McCoy Tyner with Elvin Jones, and yet he is in charge of the jazz program at the University of Arizona. And I often think about the challenges that he faces in as much as, you know, how was he raised musically, and are there correlations between how he was raised musically and how he can give back to his students. Most people realize that as a musician, it's a calling, it's a spiritual calling, and you don't do it for joy or excitement. You do it to live. Angelo Versace, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. That was very kind of you to say all those things.
Oh, you're welcome, man. I just wanted to get into it, man. I mean, it's funny. I interview guys like Billy Childs and other people that are, you know, and they start to talk about, you know, in and of itself, the academy is not a bad thing. But, you know, he starts to talk about the way he came up musically and how today what the issues are within the four walls of academia, and I transcribe it and I put it up on new media, and then he gets upset about it to a degree just because he's been, you know, he's a full-time professor at Berklee and he doesn't want to bite the hand that feeds him. So, and he's getting paid with a paycheck from the university, from Berklee. So it's to me it's hard because, and I wanted to get your perspective on, you know, what you think the most salient thing you can do in this time for your students in the jazz department at the University of Arizona. I mean, is it finding their own voice? Is it getting them out into jam sessions? Is it you riff on that, because to me it's like, you know, that's the biggest crisis to me in melodic improvisation and in music today, is just the lack of venues and opportunities and gigs for people to really find their own sound.
Yeah. You noted that I went to the University of Miami when I was for my master's and my doctorate, but before then I went to William Patterson University.
Rufus Reed, right?
There.
Rufus Reed.
Well, Rufus was two directors before I got there, and Rufus is an amazing teacher and bass player and writer. But I went to study with James Williams, and James died the summer before I got there. And we got there, and all the faculty were still reeling. And then fast forward a year and a half, and Mulgrew Miller took over the gig. And Mulgrew changed all of our lives. I mean, I'm sitting there like the luckiest guy because I'm a piano player, and Mulgrew is like kind of instantly became our hero. The guy, you know, exuded humility. And one of the first things he said to us was, I'm proof that you can make a living in this music and playing it, And because all of you are here, all of you can make it, but not all of you will make it. And what the defining factor in that has a lot to do with your own personal work ethic and a bit of luck and opportunity and that kind of thing. And so being at U of A, I say usually every year on our first like studio class day with all the jazz majors, I say something similar to everybody about what the reality is to be working in this business is like, and how it's not always a straight path to success, but how, fortunately, by the grace of God, I am also proof that you can make a living in this music, and you can.
I love it.
If you take it seriously, you can. Yeah, you can do it. So, I mean, yeah, there's. I mean, I think that if I want to answer your question more specifically, I mean, at the moment, being at a college affords you many opportunities that I think are a lot harder to come by outside of college. Not that it's impossible to come by them, but for people who I don't think are prodigy level talents coming right out of high school, like someone like Christian McBride, I know by the time he was already in high school, he was already on the road touring with people when he was 18. That's not the case with a lot of people who love this music and who want to learn about it and to play it well. And so because you're in a college surrounded by like-minded individuals, and there's, the college has resources to be able to bring in heroes of ours that you can interact with. I mean, that's already like a huge, huge thing that I can speak for myself. I was so thankful that, when I was sitting there, Mulgrew's first day, he came in, he played a solo piano rendition of Someone to Watch Over Me that was something akin to Art Tatum. And when he was done, people were standing cheering.
Wow.
And
wow.
It's there. So like, not that you couldn't experience that outside of the school, but the school afforded me that opportunity to get to know this man and many others like him. I mean, Harold Mayburn was my first piano teacher at William Patterson, and Harold Mayburn it's weird to say was with him, but he was an amazing piano player and teacher. After him, I had Armin Danelion and James Weidman. Armin in particular was an unbelievable teacher for me and really pushed me and encouraged me.
How did he push you?
I had some talent, but I still struggled playing in different keys. And so in one lesson, I remember he said, "Okay, we're going to take these 3 standards, and I want you to be able to do them in all 12 keys next week. Have fun, practice."
That is it's such a beautiful. That's a Jackie Byard. I love that line. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did that with Mark Levine, and he said, "Let's play Cherokee in all 12 keys," and then like a D or F or something, Mark fell apart, and he's like, "Okay, now you know what you need to work on. I'll see you next week."
Yeah. And I think I came back the first week, and I was maybe 19 at the time, and I was just like a mix of chord symbols and numbers in my head, and I wasn't able to do it yet. And Armin didn't sugarcoat it. He was just like, "That was terrible. Come back. Let's do it again next week." And it started getting a little better and then clicking. And, oh, man. So it sounds like it's too good. The story is crazy, but it's true. Years later, when I had moved from New Jersey to Miami, I was on a gig with a singer, a really talented vocalist down there. And she looked back at me. She said, "Do you play Stella by Starlight?" And that was one of the 3 songs he had me do in 12 keys. And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay, let's do it in D.
Right.
A 1, 2, ready, and that was all the prep. And so I emailed Armin because of him, I was able to do that with her. And I just said, "Man, I just wanted to thank you once again for that." And Armin had completely forgot. This was years later. He didn't remember that he had given me that assignment. And he said, "Wow, that sounds like it was pretty hard. Sorry about that."
You're like, "Yeah, dude, I suffered." But actually, it was the best thing that could have happened to you, probably. Really.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I mean,
So I mean, yeah, there's that. There's go ahead.
I will know. I mean, like, did you have? I mean, the magic of this music in my mind is just that there was an apprenticeship. That, you know, whether it was Wynton with Blakey or Cedar Walton with Blakey or all the guys under Miles that eventually became leaders. I mean, there was like this, and then there was such a domestic touring circuit. Did Angelo Versace, were you able to get some experience? Were you able to touch the apprenticeship outside of the academy? Meaning, like, hit the road with and really shed on the bandstand.
In different ways than what I think the experience you're describing is.
Of course.
Yeah, like you hit it on the head before. That whole system is essentially done, not completely, but basically not here anymore, which is really sad. But through experiences that I had at school, I was given opportunities to do things like go on the road and put pressure on me and learn, like, have a school of its own because of, musicians I met at school. So, for instance, one of my favorite vocal groups of all time is Take Six.
Wow. Yeah.
And when I was in my doctorate, my final year, they brought in Take Six to play with the Henry Mancini Institute Orchestra, which is a student, mostly a TA group there. I remember it's a big orchestra with a big band. We did all these arrangements of theirs, and they were like one of my favorite groups ever. And so I was like in heaven getting to play with them. And one of the members called me afterwards and wanted me to arrange his music, and we went on tour with it. And we did a number of dates in California, and went to Nashville and played there, and we did a record together, and I arranged all the music on it. And that came as a result of meeting him in a school ensemble, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm still very thankful. This guy's name is Christian Dentley. Christian Dentley, by the way, he's the baritone for Take Six. And also, when I was there, one of my buddies hooked me up to be the jazz piano teacher at another school in Florida called Broward College. And I met this drummer down there who's Jason Marsalis' drummer. His name is Dave Potter. Jason Marsalis has a group where he plays vibes. And so his drummer Dave Potter met me down there, and fast forward years later, he comes up here to Tucson to play some gigs, and gives me a call to play with him. Well, now we just recorded in October, or in November, and then early in October we toured. We went to Portland and did a couple shows there. And so I feel like there are a number of opportunities I've had like that where I've gotten to through connections at places like colleges and institutions. I've been able to, so I've been given opportunities that have been really beneficial.
When you talk, how much has it changed even from the time that, you're talking about opportunities you had at University of Miami? Has the live touring circuit changed even more insofar as the cats that you're working with today? I mean, is it even become more, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know what, for so long nobody would, bat an eyelash if you were on the road 200 days a year, 250 days a year, with a big band or an ensemble. And it's just tragic to me that cats don't have that ability to play those Chitlin circuits, the blues circuits, and things like that. But when you say to kids what your instructor, what I think Mulgrew said to you guys, where it was just, not all of you. What was the line he said? Some of you will make it, not all of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of you can, but not all of you will.
That's right. So tell me a little bit, like, not that when you say that to them, what are their opportunities? What are opportunities for younger cats that are playing melodic improvisation or this this music of jazz? Clearly, they could go into the academy. What are the things that you try to implore to them, aside from just having a voracious work ethic and busting your tail? What are the avenues for younger cats today?
There are a number of them. I think that there are a lot of schools that follow the model of learning how to do, if you can do these three things really well, you probably have some work somewhere. So obviously you need to be able to play. If you work on your pedagogy and you can teach, and if you also work on your writing and arranging and you can write. And if you work on those three things and you're actively promoting yourself, you'll get opportunities. They'll come to you if you're in the right circles to be able to do those three things really well. But more and more today, there are opening up interesting new avenues to make income and to make money and that I think didn't exist even when I was going to school. I just had last year, while we were in the middle of the pandemic and there was no show business, I invited some people to come out and give talks about being creative in the midst of it. And I had Emmett Cohen come out. Wow. And he's a piano player. He went to University of Miami with me, but at the beginning of the pandemic, Emmett started this show called Live from Emmett's Place that has basically, if you've heard of it, it's become like probably the most popular jazz live stream every Monday night in the country. He gets something like 1,400 views concurrently every Monday night, and then because of his social media prowess and his team that works with him, he has like millions of views across all his videos easily. And he's basically turned this thing that started in the pandemic into a full-time job because he's a hustler, and he has like everybody come on the show with him. I just watched one the other day. He had Joe Lovano on there. A couple weeks before that was Nick Payton. It's crazy. And everyone now, I mean, a lot of us know about this, and he's able to play with essentially, if they're free and they're able to do it, he's playing with like everyone you would ever want to play with because of his initiative in starting this thing. And, you know, he's not the only one to be creative in this way. And so we had a couple come out and talk to the students about that and being creative and using technology we have nowadays and to be able to make that work. You know, at our school, we have a lot of our jazz majors, like a few of them have taken internships in the studio. And so they learn a lot about, you know, like to be a studio engineer or a producer. And that is absolutely, you know, knowing a bit about that and being like the one guy in a band who can actually mix a track well, that can go a long way.
Absolutely.
And helping people find work, you know, so yeah, I mean, there's a number of options. It's not, like I said, kind of like with Mogul, it's not always like a straight line to success, you know.
And whatever success means, to me, the question that keeps coming back in my head is, you know, like these kids are so young and they're still searching for their own voice, and it's almost like throwing the technology on top of it or trying to build their fan base. I mean, or grow their brand, so to speak. It's almost like that's just so much when you consider that they really are still so wet behind the ears. You know, I get it. I mean, you know, like mad props to people. I mean, it's all about creativity and figuring out ways to keep pushing the ball forward. I guess maybe I'm curious about your methodology as it relates to when you work with students, piano students in particular. How do you get them to not sound like you?
Yeah, I remember whenever. So Terrence Blanchard was our combo director one of my combo directors in Miami, and Terrence he heard us play the first day. He's like, y'all just sound like other people.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I dig, man.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
So I think that the idea of individuality and personality and uniqueness in jazz music is the most important thing that we can do. But you don't start there, and you can't start there. And so if someone is still at a stage of, well, struggling to play over simple types of standards or working on whatever, things in different keys like I was, well, I think that takes that idea of uniqueness has to take a back burner to having those types of skills in place. Mm-hmm, and then, then once you have some of that stuff together, you have your ear training, you know all your chords, you know your scales, you can play in the blues or whatever. Then comes the how do I be unique? What do I have to say? Who am I? And I think the avenue to finding that more and more nowadays comes through composition, and that a lot of very well-known modern musicians who are original and unique have something to say compositionally, and we explore that a lot at our school. We had a student. I had a student recently. He graduated in 2018, so a few years back. Amazing writer. His name is Spencer Clark, and yeah, he had just a really a big gift for this, and we worked on that quite a bit while he was here. Almost more than his piano playing, with his composition. And yeah, I not everyone takes that route, but I think that's the way that I see a lot of people today. You know, they're really good writers, and they find their voice through that vein.
Do you try to encourage? Who were your major influences? Because, when I saw you play, it was obviously an exceptional group of musicians. I saw you with Arthur Vint, Matt Mitchell, and Bryce, and then there was this gray cat on trumpet. I can't remember his name, but it was like you guys were like burning and just flowing, and part of it's like it's okay to beg, borrow, and steal from all the people that you worship, and then ultimately try to find your own voice. But do you ever? How do you try to? Sometimes I feel like in composition in modern jazz, it can get a little bit wonkish, like it's a little bit too academic. How do you get them to play with a little grease? Like the blues is in your vocabulary. Like you have the blues in your vocabulary. How did you get that How did you develop the blues in your vocabulary?
Yeah, the trumpet player you're trying to think of, by the way, is Jason Carter.
Fantastic, dude.
But by the way, Jason just had a little baby, and he's out on break for the moment. But he's
congratulations,
really
beautiful.
My influences.
You know what it is when I listen to I just feel like when I listen. I'm not talking about your program. I'm just saying when I listen to modern jazz, it's become very, in some ways, very classicalized. Whereas you go back to the 50s, 60s, or into the 70s, you can really still hear the blues is right alongside the jazz, and I just love that so much. And part of it was because it was still very much a street music. You get it inside the academy, and then everything becomes codified. And so, I hear in you that there's an adherence and a vocabulary with the blues, and I just want you to talk about your own way of telling that story, of how you told your story through the blues, because that is imperative in jazz. Because sometimes you can create the most amazing compositions, but I don't know, I've just talked to enough people where they're like, they wind up staring at the wall because there's no real feeling in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're about to have Gerald Clayton come out, and he's our main guest artist for the year and play with the big band. And as I was talking with the students about it, one of the things that really strikes me is because Gerald, to me, is a very modern piano player. But what Gerald does so well is tie and lace the history of the music into his concept. And so one of his recent records is a Live at the Vanguard record, and he does a Bud Powell tune. in the middle of the set.
Sick.
And
That's so great.
And but he winds it in really well. It's like really carefully placed, and it makes sense with how he plays. And so, I mean, an obvious answer to your question is that our job, as much as we can, is to teach students how to listen to music and show them the appropriate tradition of straight ahead jazz and the types of guys that we're playing on the Chitlin circuit.
Totally, dude.
You know,
yes,
and,
man.
And to help them learn that as best as we can. And I mean, I know Bryce and I, and Arthur teaches at the school with me, and so does Jason. All of us have said all the time, we're in an improv class or something, and we're dealing with certain scales or whatever. And there's a sense of, in a class like that, where you learn an exercise and you have to be able to demonstrate it, that can actually really help you. But there's another sense, like what you were saying, where that can just be something where you hear someone solo and it sounds like something they've learned in an improv class.
That's right.
And so it's a delicate balance. And we say all the time, what we're teaching you, what we're helping you here in this class is beneficial for you, but let's move beyond school. And I want to see you come out to our gigs. When when Gerald comes and he's going to play, if you're not in the group, you need to be there and witness him, be around that.
That's right. That's a very good point. See them. Yeah, see them. Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're saying is valid, and I think that there's work that we as educators have to do to, not make jazz a completely codified thing where this is A plus B equals jazz. It's not that.
It is not that. Like that. It is not. And like you go back, like, I'm not sure, like one of the records I would foist on your students is like, I don't know if you ever know the record Jazz Blues Fusion, John Mayall. And like Mayall, I mean, he's a British cat and he's a blues player, but in that band is Blue Mitchell, Red Holloway, I think Keith Hartley's on drums, and then like Freddie Robinson is on guitar, and Freddie's like a blues guitar player, and but these guys, the shame of it is that it's not the shame of it. It's just there were guys that were, I don't care if it was Phil Upchurch or Joe Sample or Freddie Robinson, these guys were playing. The Holy Rollers would come out in the summer, put up a tent. And man, the place would be swinging, but there was no rules to a degree. I mean, the blues and it was just it was burning, visceral music, and I guess it's really hard. That's what was cool about seeing you guys, is that you were playing from the heart. You were playing from your heart. And it wasn't, did you learn to hear music before you learned to read it?
I appreciate that. Yes. I grew up near Pittsburgh. I'm from a small town in Western PA called Indiana, PA.
Wow.
And it's about an hour, a little over an hour drive from Pittsburgh. And the main jazz musician in Pittsburgh growing up, and he still lives there, his name is Roger Humphreys. And Roger is the drummer on Horace Silver's Song for My Father.
Totally.
And so growing up, Roger was extremely generous, and all of his band members were. When we were in high school, a couple buddies of mine who took jazz really seriously would go up, and we'd be, these three skinny white boys going in and sounding sad on Autumn Leaves or something.
This is what I'm talking about. This is legendary.
He would allow us
to
learn. And of course, Pittsburgh is, it's like the land of Stanley Turrentine. And Tommy
Turrentine and all those guys.
Totally, yeah.
Benson, all those.
And so you can sense that the blues is at home there. Mm-hmm. And so we learn from a young age to play in such a way that would make Roger and his peers happy. and you
I love it,
man. And those guys, I mean, what I loved about them too is that they weren't We talk about vibe in jazz a lot. If you get vibed,
Sure. Yeah. They weren't pretentious at all. Yeah.
No, and they weren't cruel with us.
Right.
But after we'd play, and it wasn't great, they'd just be, okay, thanks for coming. Yeah. And that's
like,
about
right.
it. And we would feel terrible and go home and learn the tune that got called that we didn't know, whatever it was, and come back ready to go at it again, and they would let us sit in again. And that sense of generosity. I mean, the best thing I can do for my students is something similar. Have opportunities for them to come and play with us. And, I'm not going to sugarcoat it to them, but I also won't just destroy them if I don't think.
Well, no, it's like you guys are like, yeah, okay, we'll see you next. Like it's a kinder, gentler society now, but you have to still convey that they didn't cut it, and they got to go home and do some soul searching,
Yeah, and I was, we're fortunate here because we have. I'm sure you're aware of the Tucson Jazz Institute.
Sure.
And, Scott Black and Bryce Winston and John Black, the three directors there, they really know the history of this music well. And there's a whole generation of younger kids who get to the source of this stuff because of them. And, I was lucky when I was growing up, the two buddies with me were a drummer and a bass player. Joe Saylor on drums and Phil Keane on bass, and so we were playing all the time as a trio. And I was just very fortunate.
This is what I'm talking. This is what I want to talk about. You guys were on the bands. So first of all, those cats they're still with us and thriving? They're doing all right?
Dude, yeah.
I got to talk to those cats immediately, man. This is what I'm. So you guys would go? Maybe not in Indiana per se, but you'd go. Where were the places that you'd go and play?
We would play in Indiana if Joe. So Joe's dad was our band director.
Wow, this is what I'm talking about. It's unreal.
He would set up all these gigs for us, and we'd go play. And we'd play in Indiana, but we'd also play in Pittsburgh. There was one of the last remaining clubs in Pittsburgh from the Chitlin circuit. What's the name of it?
Was it Crawford's Grill? Crawford's Grill?
That's it. Crawford Grill.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the Crawford Grill.
Yeah.
And the original one still existed when I was in high school. It shut down when I was in my undergrad, but it was there. And so we got to go play. We went a couple times because Roger played there. I know great trumpet player Sean Jones had his bands play there. And so we would go and, occasionally they'd let us sit in on that stage, It was pretty... it's intimidating as you're a kid learning how to play jazz. It was one of the best things that could ever have happened. But yes, man, Joe Saylor, the drummer that I grew up with, he is John Batiste's drummer on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
I mean, he's thriving. And then Phil Keane also played with John for a long time. Man, he's toured with Harry Connick Jr. and Branford Marsalis. He's a great bass player. He's the director of jazz at Snow College now, which is up from Utah.
Man.
And so we were, we all were like best friends and playing together, and
what do you remember? Like,
what was
like? You guys were kind of freaks in high school. Like, you guys were like the jazz freaks. Like, what hooked you into into this music to begin with? I mean, I don't think I really got it. I think I heard like Grover Washington Jr., A Secret Place or something, and was like blown away by how funky and danceable. This was in college, and I was like, and then I just went off from there. Pat Martino or something like that. But I mean, what hooked you to this music originally, even before you got the trio together?
Well, Joe, Phil, and I we were all in the same grade in school, but we also all went to the same church. And Joe's and Phil's parents loved jazz music, and so it was foisted upon us.
Wow, I love that.
And I remember when we were kids, they needed a piano player. This was before I started even playing piano, and Joe, the drummer, said, "Man, it's not that hard. You just play melodies in your right hand and chords in your left
Yeah,
hand."
it's just easy, no problem, you know.
And then we just kind of went, and then because the three of us had we realized we all had some talent, we all really loved it. Then I think we would all just push each other. I mean, we'd get together and rehearse all the time and just play, and then we'd go up to Pittsburgh. Our parents really trusted us. I mean, we were 16, 17, driving an hour and a half to go to downtown Pittsburgh, the red light district, to go hear jazz and come back on a school night. They would let us do that multiple times a week.
Wow.
So, and then, like I said, Joe's dad was our band director and was just constantly setting up stuff for us to do. We had a lot of gigs, in high school. I was very fortunate how I grew up.
That was the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up because, you did have a trio with a traditional piano, bass, drums. I remember doing my second interview with Steve Gadd, and he was obsessed with this this Oscar Peterson Stan Getz album on Verve, which was Oscar, Stan, Ray Brown, and Herb Ellis. So it was a drummerless quartet. And even when I talked to some of the guys from the Bay Area scene, psychedelic Bay Area scene from the 60s, guys like Terry Haggerty, who was one of the first cats to sort of run bebop changes through rock tunes. He makes it a point to say that, as we evolved, I'm talking more about the guitar, because the guitar used to be an accompanist instrument, and then it became we got into this Guitar Hero thing, and things got louder and louder, and kids stopped focusing on rhythm and really developing their own inner time feel. I remember John Abercrombie told me, he's like, if you don't have rhythm, you're not going to get a gig. And I was curious about a situation that you had in your career where you didn't have a traditional trap set, if you ever was in a situation like that, and how you developed your own inner time feel without relying on the drummer or the bass player. So, in some ways, I remember guys like Julian Priester talking about in Sun Ra's band in Chicago, he'd just point to cats and they'd have to start soloing, but because they had their own inner time feel, it loosened up the rhythm section to play melodically. And that's sort of the beginnings of the magic of music. So were you ever in a situation where one of those kind of maybe just guitar, bass, piano kind of thing, where you had to focus on really just your own inner time feel?
Sure. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there's a local singer here. His name is Joe Bourne. He does a Nat King Cole tribute thing. So it's the same idea, just that.
That's right, Nat Cole,
player,
exactly.
I'm not singing, yeah. But the Nat Cole trio thing is the same thing. And maybe just 3 weeks ago now, a great singer from Portland came down to Phoenix, did a number of gigs with her and Tom Wakeling and a great guitarist, Howard Alden, where we were playing that exact thing. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, another crazy coincidence in my youth, that there's a local university teacher there who knew the Marsalis family because she taught the kids in school. And so she brought out Ellis Marsalis a number of times. And
dude, my brother, man, the dearest man. Rest in peace. What a beautiful fucking dude, man. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I resonate with what you said, and I remember viscerally hearing him play and sitting with Phil and Joe, and us saying, "Oh, listen to how he plays his quarter notes. It's just so swinging." And I believe he wasn't playing with a drummer that time. It was like some house show or something he was doing, just like solo piano, maybe with a bass player. And I remember, even from a young age, just wanting to swing and wanting to groove more than anything else, and chasing after that, and wanting to when I play with my friends, help the rhythm section do that better, and wanting to find recordings where people were swinging and grooving or whatever. and talking about that constantly. You know, when I met Mulgrew, it was like I would always ask him, because he was my combo director, and I would always ask him we'd play a tune, I'd ask him to play after I was done, and when this magical thing, when he would sit down and play, everybody would sound better because his rhythmic concept was so strong. And so that's why it was just a constant thing for me growing up and learning about how to make groove and swing happen. Yeah, and you're right. Even if there's no drummer, Mulgrew used to have this whole thing where he would demonstrate comping, and he'd do this thing where we'd all play a tune, and then he'd have everybody cut out except for the piano player, and you'd have to comp and continue the groove by yourself, comping as if everybody's playing.
Exactly.
And Mulgrew was, you know, so good at that. He was an unbelievable comper. And so that's what, you know, my whole life I was just striving towards that end of, it doesn't matter, you know, if you're missing an instrument, you know, if you don't have an instrument there, you can still swing and groove without it. And, you know, plenty of examples like what you mentioned with Oscar's group that are like that are you know, are wonderful.
Yeah, what group did I? No, well, I just got this record, Oscar Moore Trio, and it's just like burning. It's the most burning, and there's no drummer on it, and it's just like the guys have most they're swinging so hard, and
yeah,
I'm talking not so much jazz in today's jazz world. I'm talking more like the jam scene. The cats are much more interested in just sort of facility and technique. Do you find, is there a subtle way, sort of the way Humphreys used to, or those cats used to sort of at least subtly let you know that you weren't really cutting it that night? I mean, is there a way to sort of where you can talk to the students about reeling in the facility and the riffology and the chops and just focusing on deep groove? It seems to me like that's a bit of it's not as sexy a thing, but that's really what makes things, you know, cook.
It's what you just said there at the end about that being the thing that makes things cook and that being the thing. I mean, we were hearing that from people from day one in Pittsburgh.
Right.
We were hearing, don't play all the chops. The way you touch people's hearts is through your groove. And so, yeah, I mean, certain different people would say that in different ways. Like I said, like Roger would say it, he wouldn't be cruel. It would just be, man, thanks for coming. Yeah. And that would be it. And
have a nice trip home. Have a nice trip home, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that, I think that was really good for us to see that, because we would feel terrible, and we knew what we did. We knew how poorly we played.
Well, no, because there's a difference between, there's a difference between like playing poorly and then just sort of like saying so much, as opposed to like, I remember when I talked to Kenny Burrell, like, God bless him. I hope he's still doing all right. You know, he was at UCLA, and he's like, I used to go to Donald Byrd's house, and we didn't even there were no books we just transcribed off the records. You know, we had our own jam sessions and worked on those kinds of things. And he goes, now those jam sessions are in the student union at UCLA. I mean, so is there opportunities to get the kids, the students now that you have in a non-pandemic time, into a situation where you can kind of be the Ralph Humphreys in some ways, where you can say, you got to pull, you know, you didn't touch my heart tonight. I want you to touch my heart. What is the closest thing you can get to get those kids into a situation where you're pushing them out of their comfort zone of just, you know, technique, facility, and just blowing?
Yeah. We do this all the time, and we have a weekly studio class where students have to play for each other, and it's a much more informal class. And yes, we say this to our rhythm section players all the time. If what you're playing isn't adding to the groove, then what are you doing? And some, you know, it's funny because there are nuts and bolts guys in jazz pedagogy, people who are really good at saying, okay, you rush your and of 3 to 4 or whatever it is, this chord doesn't line up quite right on this part of the song. And there's other guys who just kind of say, what are you playing? And both approaches, I think, are necessary for every musician.
Absolutely.
I think it's really helpful if someone tells you something specific, and I think it's really helpful if someone tells you something that's not specific, but you didn't play well, and you have to figure it out. And we have a lot of moments like that in our program, both in the studio class. We have regular rehearsals where we're constantly pointing back to records and, So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we have many moments like that, and we try to make sure we emphasize playing from the heart more than playing from what you practiced.
So we have a game on this program called Name That Voice, and I don't expect you to know who this is, but just pay attention to the content, and we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I believe that music, to me, brings a lot of, the real reality of life to me. I don't see materialism as being the cosmic connection in life.
No.
That's
that's about as simply brilliantly put as I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, I don't think that brings cosmic joy.
Yeah, I think we definitely know that we are linked to a higher source. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. I think we know that things as we see them as physical things are here, and they are really it's kind of generated. You know what I mean? Like we generate something.
Mm-hmm.
So a car is a generated object. A house is a generated object. It's not something that's ordained, you see. So, we look at life as, sometimes people who are into materialism look at generated life. It's something that's, not really ordained, you see. And I believe in ordained, and music is ordained. It's not generated. We generated through synthesizers and everything, and maybe through programs and software. But the real soulful music is an ordained thing, and to get to it, we have to be submissive. We have to believe from our heart and our soul that, we are just a little conduit. You see, everything else is already existing. We are tuning in, And so that's...
Angelo, that was an interview I did with an incredible sitar player. He's pretty ridiculous. He plugs in. He plays electric sitar. His name is Ashwin Batish, and he teaches at UC Santa Cruz. But I have a couple questions for you. We talk about you used this term that is used in the West a lot, which is like if you want to have success in this jazz life, and success to me success in my mind is, regardless if it's broadcasting or playing the piano or making a sandwich, it's being singular, it's being unique, and it's cutting above the morass of what everybody else is doing in that particular field. And a lot of people would say, well, success is money, and it's providing for your family, and it's, taking vacations and buying cars, and to a degree that, you do have to sing for your supper. But the questions I have for you are, what is your definition of success? Do you believe, when did you surrender to the music? And what I mean by that is recognizing that when you got out of your own way, you were a conduit for information coming through you from the heavens.
Big question.
Big question. And you know what? Because you mentioned the church. You're from a small. I know that spiritualism and the divine is part of your existence. It's a big part of music, and I just want you to riff on that any way you want.
Yeah. Success can mean, as you pointed out, different things to different people. We live in America, and so I think materialism always plays a part in success. For me, because of my background and growing up in a Christian church, and I'm still a Christian, and the importance of my faith in my life, success always is bringing glory to God and how I do things.
Dig.
And so if I play, and if I play in a certain way, and I don't prepare the correct way, or if I take shortcuts, or if I don't, like I said, like prepare in the appropriate way, then I don't think that brings glory to the Lord. And so I think that it doesn't matter if I do well on the gig and if people like it. I think there's something there that still I still have to grow up and do better in.
I dig. No, I dig.
And
I dig.
So I think bringing joy to people, helping them forget their life just for a moment, and then what your man said there about being selfless, and when you're playing music, kind of like removing yourself from the equation, and like my hero Mulgrew, like exuding humility at all times, and trying to make others sound as good as you can when you play. I think that brings glory to God. And so success then can be measured not so much in how much money you make over your career, but in your continual striving to make that happen and to realize that. And I guess the only person who then can measure how successful you were at that would be God, who we will meet someday. And we have to keep trying to be successful.
This is profound, but I think you're spot on. So let me just go back to what you were talking about before about, do you believe that music is an ordained path?
Yeah, I'd have to think a bit about how he phrased that to know how I'd respond specifically. But yes, I speak from my own experience.
You know what I mean? You know what because that was very vague. I mean, more to the point, like, it's not like, we've talked about composition before. That's sort of like a gateway to the way you can put something together. You know, like he said, we have synthesizers which are generating. You can make all this as opposed to just like Angelo gets off the stage and I'm like, how did you do that? And you're like, I have no idea, because it just came through you. It just came through you. It was like, to me, like, yes, you have to have the rudiments, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the vocabulary, and then when you get on the bandstand, you let all that go, and you try to put your ego aside, or whatever kind of bad day or good day you're having, and you let the information come through you from the heavens. That to me is an ordained. That's what my favorite music that I listen to. That's what it's about. And I know you can't carbon copy it, you can't put it in a bottle. But do you remember a time that you can point to when you really did surrender to the music itself?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I try to get there all the time.
Sure.
You're getting to, I think, the right way of thinking about it, where if the first thing that we need to learn is facility, and then we need to learn repertoire, and you need to have all that stuff in place in order to access the spiritual side of what we do. And once you're like, yeah, the way you phrased it, I think was really great. Once you're on the bandstand and playing, you have to let all of that stuff go in order to access that spiritual side of playing.
That's right.
And it is not something that can be, that can just be taught and you play an exercise and it's spiritual. It's not like that. And
right.
I think that the way that you can quickly and easily help yourself get there is to play with or listen to people who get there, and be around people like that who get there right away. And that sense of awe, like someone comes off the bandstand and then you're just so impressed with it and it seems very natural to them.
That's right.
Being around that a lot is a really good way to learn how to get there, because there's nothing else quite like it, is there? You know, it's the
most magical. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to play, but for a patron who's obsessed with spiritual burning music, It's the best feel. I mean, it's healing. It's like descarga. It's like a spiritual discharge in your brain. It's a healing force. Music is a healing force. But if it gets codified, if it gets too, if it's too formula trip, I can't handle it. And that's why I just want people to go for it all the time. And I realize that's not easy. Did you feel like you became a conduit? I mean, your connection to God, you are a musical healer, Angelo. I mean, you're obviously a teacher, but your healing capacity as a musician. Were you already maybe not totally aware of it, but do you remember when you started to become a channel or a conduit? Was it in high school with the trio? I just want to give some perspective to students that might listen to this down the road and recognize that it is the forever journey, but when did that come for you in your existence?
Yeah, I don't.
And maybe you don't know.
I don't know. I remember listening to like my favorite records when I was a kid, and listening, like, for instance, one of my many of my buddies listened to all the time was Kenny Garrett. We listened to him constantly. And we used to try to find every record we could of his. If he would come through Western Pennsylvania ever, we would go see him. If we happened to be at a jazz festival and he was playing, we made sure to go see him. And we realized that he didn't reinvent the wheel every time he took a solo. that there was an element of repetitiveness to the types of ideas he may play.
Right.
But what was brilliant about him is how this isn't unique to Kenny Garrett. This is most master musicians. The way that they brilliantly string one idea to the next, and their sense of innate phrasing
Absolutely.
it's like stunning. And so that combined with a lesson I learned later on, which is you don't have to take an award-winning solo every time you solo.
Yeah, that's right.
helps you get there more often. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you solo, and you don't have to take an award-winning solo every time you solo. And no one should really be expecting that every time you solo. And it helps you get to that state of, I want to serve the music, I want to serve this band, I want to glorify God every time I play.
It's so freaking beautiful, man. Is there anything on your bucket list that you want to do that you haven't done in your career?
Yeah, I want to play at the Village Vanguard.
Yeah, baby. That's a good...
I haven't played there, and I want to do it.
Well, I mean, let you and maybe just you and Vin, like organ. Do you play organ or just piano?
I play just piano.
Yeah, no, maybe just you and just piano drums. That would be the sickest just duo. Back and forth.
Oh, listen, man, I'm down. I'm there.
Have you played the Nash, Lewis's place?
Yes, several times.
Okay, so that's the first step. So you want to play the Vanguard. Do you want to lead a group? I mean, coming out, if we ever get out of this mess, I mean, is there just something that that you pray? You've basically done so much, and you're already. I mean, it's the forever journey, though. I mean, do you have any in your mind's eye? Is there just a dream, something that you would like to do? Not just a one-off at the Vanguard. Maybe you want a residency there, but is there just something like leading a group or doing a 20-state tour or anything like that?
Sure. Phil, Joe, and I, the two guys I grew up with, they came out here to Arizona a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, and we did a tour. We played some here in Arizona, and we drove up to Utah and played some there as well. We haven't really recorded or really had a seriously long engagement, like a hit,
right?
since we were in high school.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
And so when they came and we played those gigs, it was pretty magical for us. We were really enjoying it. And so I think would be to do some sort of long-term project with those guys, where we're, getting to play on a long stint together. That would be something that I would love to do.
Before I let you go, Angelo, how can I find out the gigs that you're playing in town or in the state, or you're playing a lot, and I guess I'm just not really, I see the stuff at Pastiche and stuff, but I just would love to come bring my daughters to see you play. And is there just you have a website, or how do people find out about where you're actually playing live?
Yeah, I have a website, angeloversace.com. I also have, artist page on Facebook, facebook.com/Angelo Versace Music, and the same thing with Instagram. And so I post updates on where I'll be on both those things and all that stuff. And yeah, I play with Bryce at Pastiche most Sundays. And then, Arthur started the Century Room.
I want to be able to bring in Billy Cobham and Ron Carter. I mean, is that possible? Can I bring? How do I get? Because my connections with these cats are deep, but I just don't want to how should I go about? I want to bring in the cats, man.
Arthur there have been a number of artists that have come through that I've talked with Arthur about bringing in, and he is so open to making things work. And if you want to bring in artists, getting in touch with Arthur directly after the broadcast here, I can share his number with you, and we can he'll help you out in making that happen. But the space there is beautiful.
It looks beautiful. Yeah,
man. 2 years ago, there were no jazz venues with a piano here in Tucson, and now there's 2 that have stages and are good sound, good piano, dedicated jazz venues. We're blessed. I was up in Portland. Portland's a larger city by an order of magnitude than Tucson, and they have 1. They don't even have 2. We have 2. So
yeah, no, believe me, Chuck Israels and Dave Friesen are very bitter about that. I mean, there's no places to play. I mean, it's true. Actually, I will say, Tucson is, with your help and cats like you, it is a burgeoning music scene. I just want to get up and dance too. I mean, the jazz, to me, I just want to liberate. So anyway, man.
Did you make it to the festival? Were you able to see any shows?
Yeah, the jazz. The one show I caught was at the Congress Hotel outside. It was with you guys.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
But is your boy isn't Batiste coming back in March?
It's the first week of March he'll come, and my best friend will be with him, Joe Saylor.
Yes,
I believe it's March 4th. I think it's March 4th at Centennial Hall, and you best believe I will be there, and we'll be hanging out.
Absolutely. No, I'd love to do an interview with Saylor. If you could hook me up with Saylor.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd love to do an interview with him before he comes down here. But yeah, man, he
loves to do it.
Yeah, I would love to give back to this town as much as I can. I found my voice here. I've grown my show here, and I have very, very deep connections with the cats. And so I'm ready to. I want to be able to facilitate some of this stuff because I never would have expected Tucson to have more jazz piano places than Portland, Oregon. But obviously, we're trending up, man. So. It was so great to hang with you, man, and I look forward to seeing you swinging on the bandstand real soon, man.
Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it, man.
Be cool, bro. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Take care.
Later.
Bye.
That's a great hang with the head of the Jazz Studies program at the University of Arizona, Angelo Versace. It's been a heavy day. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. See you tomorrow.